Mass Effect Legendary Edition. Romancing Tali, hanging out with Garrus, running and gunning across the stars, and saving the galaxy while doing it is what made Mass Effect one of the best things to ever happen to gaming. And playing the Legendary Edition was a great reminder of that fact. Unfortunately, the biggest issue with the original Mass Effect trilogy, Mass Effect 3's ending, is still intact, and it still sucks pretty bad all these years later. And for those of you watching that don't know, by some miracle, the ending to Mass Effect 3 was so reviled when the game first launched that it caused Mass Effect's biggest controversy. And this is a series that had some form of controversy since day one. Anyone remember the Fox News Mass Effect sex scandal for the first game?
I mean, they don't show women as being valued for anything other than their sexuality. And it's a man in this game deciding how many women he wants to be with.
We'll give you all the details. Yeah, I'm not sure why it didn't get an adults-only rating. That's the highest rating that it can have. So first of all, this board that rates them needs to have their head examined.
And I love the sex box on the bottom of the screen there for the captions. Whoever made that caption must have just been so damn proud of themselves. And it makes it sound like you can put your dick in the console, or at the very least a box of some kind.
Dick in a box. My dick in a box, baby.
Anyway, one more quick note about Mass Effect 3's ending. In spite of the fact it fucking sucked and gave me the worst gaming hangover I've ever had, so bad in fact I couldn't touch a game for 2 weeks, I still think Mass Effect is one of the best RPG series out there, and it's a clear-cut example of it's not about the destination, it's about the journey to get there. But man alive, after reaching the destination, I sure needed a break. But 9 long years later, the Legendary Edition was a great way to revisit the Mass Effect franchise. BioWare put in the time and care with this remaster, and it was a great reminder that each game in the Mass Effect trilogy has something unique to offer. For example, Mass Effect 1 is still the best introduction to a narrative-focused video game universe I have ever encountered, and it accomplished this with detail-oriented world building coupled with a diverse set of fascinating alien races. And yes, Fox News, you can fuck them. Mass Effect 2 had the best Suicide Squad ever assembled with a revamped and satisfying combat system to go with it. And then finally, Mass Effect 3 mostly served as a satisfying conclusion to the trilogy, resolving multiple plot threads while providing epic set pieces all tied to a compelling narrative that rushed forward at a breakneck pace. And aside from allowing fans both new and old the chance to experience these games on modern consoles, where the Legendary Edition really shines through is the needed improvements made to graphics, lighting, and particularly in Mass Effect 1's case, gameplay. The Legendary Edition did its job in keeping the feel of the original titles while simultaneously improving gameplay segments that needed it. And as is always the case with a remaster done right, playing the Legendary Edition was almost as if BioWare was able to take my rose-colored nostalgia for this series and make it into a reality. I really hope the experience of remastering the Mass Effect trilogy serves as a guidepost for future Mass Effect titles that are developed. Great dialogue options, a diverse range of classes to choose from, and a more focused mission structure made Mass Effect so much fun to play. The more linear nature of the missions themselves was particularly pleasant to experience again, because I found it enabled all 3 games to have very focused and well-paced gameplay segments, with the added benefit of having a more focused narrative as well. This allowed Mass Effect to tell a well-paced story that rarely felt drawn out. And hey, what's a good story without good characters? With good writing and quality voice acting, emphasis on the quality, Mass Effect brought some of my most favorite and loved characters of all time to life.
Through an emergency induction port.
That's a straw, Tally.
Emergency induction port.
And I can say for a fact I didn't cringe or wince at a single piece of spoken dialogue across all 3 games. Every line was delivered with a sense of care and professionalism that I sometimes forget games are capable of possessing. And Mass Effect's journey across 3 games has a soundtrack so good and so inexorably tied to its identity, I can't imagine it sounding like anything else. But what about the combat? What about the fun gameplay? Does Mass Effect still hold up in that department? Does it match my memories? Just like everything else, that's a big yeah. While I was finding Mass Effect 1's combat enjoyable enough again in the Legendary Edition, it wasn't until Mass Effect 2 that I really remembered what made the gameplay so fun. Mass Effect 1 felt more like a one-man show with Shepard. I felt like companions weren't as useful in the first game, but it's a completely different story for games 2 and 3. Being able to combine my Shepard's abilities with those of my squad mates was a blast. It was pure joy to re-experience Liara levitating enemies with her biotic abilities as I riddled them with bullets as they floated helplessly. And that's not to mention combining companion characters' tech and biotic abilities with my own to create devastating and at times hilarious combinations that absolutely devastated any opponents I came across. And playing all this again on Insanity difficulty offered a balanced gameplay challenge that I could only describe as perfect. But while the difficulty might be perfect, the eradication of bugs in all three titles was not. While many bugs were squashed in the Legendary Edition, bugs were still the biggest issue I found with the game. While old bugs are gone, new ones seem to have been created in their place. And this included everything from EDI doing costume changes mid-mission, to characters firing invisible guns, or hell, even Commander Shepard levitating like David Blaine. Most of the bugs I encountered, however, were in the final 2 pieces of Mass Effect 3's DLC, with fairly few instances in Mass Effect 1 and Mass Effect 2. So I'm inclined to think they were possibly given the least amount of debugging compared to other sections of the games. But even with the bugs, this is a collection of great games still, but they are a product of a studio from a bygone era. In the 9 years since Mass Effect 3 launched, BioWare has changed greatly as a developer. They are almost unrecognizable. And BioWare, with Mass Effect Legendary Edition, was in desperate need of a win. With the lackluster reception of Mass Effect Andromeda, the failure of Anthem, and the delay of Dragon Age 4, things were looking particularly bleak for BioWare. And I was convinced personally that they were one more flop away from being shuttered. And with EA's history of shutting down studios they have acquired, it wasn't out of the realm of possibility. And that's even considering the fact BioWare was so important to EA, it had at one point 6 different subsidiary studios, all with the BioWare name. 6! As a fan and an outside observer, when I saw these new BioWare studios pop up, it really seemed to me like they were diluting the BioWare brand. If everything is named BioWare, the name loses its oomph, its clout, its fucking uniqueness. And it wasn't really fooling everyone into thinking all these studios were going to pump out universally adored titles all of a sudden. And in the end, they only released average titles at best, or as was often the case, projects were canceled before release. And this only hurt the BioWare brand. EA was being a
big, stupid jellyfish.
But in spite of EA and BioWare's recent troubles, Mass Effect Legendary Edition is one of the best remasters I have ever played. And anyone who has not played the Mass Effect trilogy needs to get on it. Odds are you'll be thanking me for the recommendation, that is, after you get over the ending. I give Mass Effect Legendary Edition a tally pretending to be the SSV Normandy out of 10.